It began with a phone call no one ever expects. Miss Alvarez, I'm sorry to inform you that your father, Emilio Alvarez, was found deceased in his apartment yesterday. The world stopped. I remember standing barefoot in my kitchen, a half-cut avocado browning on the counter, the ceiling fan clicking overhead like a broken metronome. My father was dead, and I hadn't spoken to him in 7 years. We weren't estranged. Exactly. Just faded, like a Polaroid left in the sun. After Mom died, he'd folded into himself, disappeared into vinyl records, old jazz, and long, unexplained silences. We texted on holidays. That was the extent of our relationship. When I arrived in Chicago to sort through his belongings, his apartment was exactly as I remembered, neat, vintage, infused with the warm scent of sandalwood and old paper. There were still jazz posters on the wall. Miles Davis, Coltrane, Ella. A dusty Fender leaned in the corner by the window, forgotten like a soldier off duty. The lawyer handed me a single item, a classic silver iPod, the kind they stopped making years ago. He left no will, just this, said it was for you. An iPod. Not money, not letters. Just a scratched-up relic, loaded with his favorite songs. At first I laughed. A dry, confused, bitter laugh. But then I noticed the label taped to the back. His handwriting, loopy and uneven. Press play. No skipping, Dad. So I did. The first song was Cantaloupe Island by Herbie Hancock. It filled my rental car as I drove back to the hotel. Instantly, I was 8 again, sitting on his lap at the piano, his fingers dancing over the keys. He always said that song made him feel like he was driving through a dream. As it played, the hotel lobby vanished. I was in our old living room, the ghost of his voice humming softly in my ear. The second track came without pause, Across the Universe by the Beatles. I didn't realize I was crying until the valet handed me tissues. Something was happening, something more than nostalgia. These songs weren't random. Back in my room, I connected the iPod to my laptop. There were exactly 34 songs, arranged in a very specific order, and under each title, he'd left a note in the lyrics section of the metadata. The first message read, Cantaloupe Island. You used to sit on the bench and press the low notes while I soloed. You were so serious. I never told you. That's how I knew you'd be okay. Because you listened. I stared at the screen, then tapped the next song, Toe. Across the Universe. The day your mother died. I walked 12 miles listening to this on repeat. You were in your room. So small. I didn't know how to tell you. I clutched the iPod like it was a living thing. A conduit. A lifeline from a man who never said much when he was alive. That night, I listened to every track. But after song 7, something strange happened. The 8th song wouldn't play. Instead, a prompt popped up. Location services required. What? The iPod wasn't connected to the internet. It wasn't supposed to do that. I frowned and clicked again. Same message. Location services required. Against logic, I opened my phone and pulled up the maps. The lyrics for track 8 were just an address. 8. The night we met. Lord Heron, 39996 West Armitage. Upstairs. Booth. Near the jukebox. I stared at it for a long time. It was almost midnight, and the last thing I wanted was a scavenger hunt. But something in my chest, a tug, a thread, pulled me off the bed. The bar was small, tucked between a laundromat and a closed pet store. Inside, warm lights glowed over wooden booths and framed record covers. A jukebox sat in the corner, humming softly. I approached the booth. An old man looked up, startled. You Emilio's kid? I blinked. How do you? He said you might come. Left this for you. He slid over a small envelope. Inside was a photo of my father with a woman I didn't recognize. She had thick curls and eyes like mine. The back read, Lina, 1993. Tell her I'm sorry. The old man was already walking away. I stood there, heart pounding, staring at a stranger with my face. Lena. Who was she? Back in the hotel, I skipped to track 9. 9 slide. Fleetwood Mac. I had to let go of something I didn't know how to hold. You deserved more than half a father. That was the night I realized this wasn't a playlist. It was a map, a confession, a resurrection. Every track, a breadcrumb. Every note, a secret he never told. And I was only on song 9. I couldn't sleep. The hotel room hummed with the city's restless breath. Sirens in the distance. The occasional bark of laughter from the street below. And in my hand, the photo of a woman I'd never met who shared my eyes. Lena. I stared at the name scrawled in Dad's familiar handwriting, wondering how many memories it carried for him, and how many had been kept from me. By morning, I was sitting in a downtown cafe, sipping lukewarm coffee and researching. I didn't know where to start. There was no last name, no date other than the year 1993. I was 5. That year was a blur of cartoons, peanut butter sandwiches, and my mother's perfume lingering on laundry. But for him, it was Lena. I searched public records, photo recognition tools, social media, nothing definitive. My father's past was surprisingly well hidden. Track 10 on the iPod had no song title, just an untitled file, 4 hours 12 minutes long. I hesitated, then played it. It wasn't a song. It was a recording. My father's voice. If you're listening to this, it means I'm gone, and I know you have questions. About Lena, about what I did, about what I didn't do. I froze. His voice was slower than I remembered, more fragile. She was your sister, half-sister. I met her mother during a rough patch in my marriage. It wasn't planned, but she was born in 1994. A year after, I stayed in touch for a while, sent money, even visited. But then your mother got sick, and I chose silence. Silence. I stared at the photo again. Lena wasn't just a stranger. She was family. She was a piece of me, a missing verse in the song of my life. She lives in Milwaukee now, he continued. Teaches music. Last I heard, she still plays cello in a community orchestra. She doesn't know about you, or maybe she does. I don't know anymore. I was too much of a coward to ask. I paused the recording. My hands were shaking. The next note in the metadata was an address in Milwaukee, a performance hall, and a date. Saturday, July 5, tonight. I didn't think. I packed, checked out, and got in the car. The drive was quiet. I didn't turn on the radio. My father's playlist remained untouched. It was sacred now, a ritual, each song a door. The concert hall was modest, tucked in the heart of a neighborhood of antique shops and coffee houses. I slipped inside just as the lights dimmed. There she was, third row, cello in hand, long curls cascading down her back. Her face angled toward her music sheet, but I recognized it from the photo. I knew her bone structure like I knew my own, a mirror with variation. When the orchestra began, the room filled with something ancient and aching. She played with closed eyes, swaying with the notes. Music lived in her. It pulsed in every movement. And I realized, for the first time, that music had been his way of loving us both, even when he couldn't say it. After the show, I waited. I approached slowly, rehearsing what I'd say. But when she turned and our eyes met, something passed between us. Recognition without knowledge. An unspoken call. "Hi," I said. "This is gonna sound insane, but I think we might be sisters." She blinked, her brow furrowed. Then she laughed, soft and uncertain. "You're not the first person to say that tonight." I frowned. "What?" She pulled out her phone and showed me a message. An anonymous email from a week ago. Subject: "The song you've never heard, body. Someone will find you soon. Her name is Mara. She's your melody." I gasped. "He sent it," I whispered. "He planned this." We sat on a bench outside the hall. I told her everything about the iPod, the playlist, the songs. Her hands trembled as she listened. "He came once," she said quietly. "I was 10. He brought me sheet music. We played together, then he left, and I never saw him again." We didn't cry. Not yet. It was too surreal, too heavy. But we promised to meet again. Before I left, I handed her an earbud. "Track 11, I said. We listened together. It was Both Sides Now, by Joni Mitchell. I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow, it's life's illusions I recall. The metadata note read, "For Lena and Mara, two halves of a broken chord. I should have played you both together." I'm sorry, I was too afraid of dissonance. I returned to Chicago with a new name echoing in my chest. Sister. But the playlist wasn't finished. There were still 23 songs to go, and I had no idea where they would lead me next. The next song was number 12. I didn't play it right away. Instead, I sat with Lena's photo in one hand and my father's iPod in the other. The emotional storm from Milwaukee hadn't settled. Meeting a sister was one thing, hearing him apologize posthumously was another. I felt like a violin strung too tight, one pull from snapping. Eventually, I gave in. Pressed play. Track 12, Blue and Green, Miles Davis. A classic, haunting. The notes hung like fog. I used to fall asleep to this when I was little. But this time, the metadata carried something unexpected. 310 South Morgan Street. Ask for Quincy. Tell him it's about the trumpet. More than a breadcrumb. It was an invitation. Morgan Street took me to a rust-colored building, wedged between a warehouse and a boarded-up bakery. A cracked neon sign above the door read, "The Brass Note." Inside it smelled of aged wood and bourbon. Dim lights, velvet booths, and on stage, a man played trumpet like he was speaking another language entirely. I waited until he stepped off stage. "Quincy?" He looked up. Mid-60s, salt and pepper beard, eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. He sized me up, cautious. Depends who's asking. I showed him the iPod and the note. His entire demeanor shifted. "Follow me." In the back office, he poured 2 drinks, whiskey for him, water for me, and he handed me a manila envelope. Inside were photos, dozens. My father in a smoky club. My father on trumpet, grinning. My father with Quincy, arms slung over each other's shoulders. "He was my brother," Quincy said. "Not by blood. Closer. We played together in every jazz dive, from New Orleans to Detroit. He was the best man I ever knew, and the most haunted." I flipped through the photos. Haunted how? "He had that way about him," Quincy said. "Like he was playing for someone who never got to hear, like every solo was a letter, never sent. He never spoke about it, just bled it through brass." I found a photo that froze me. My father holding a child. Not me, not Lena. A baby I'd never seen. "Who is this?" Quincy exhaled. "That's Jonah." My spine prickled. "Jonah?" He nodded. "A boy from a music outreach program we ran in 2007. Your dad got close with his mom, real close. After she passed, he tried to adopt the kid, but the system, well, it didn't let him. Still, he visited, sent money. The boy's last name is Davis now. Like Miles." I couldn't speak. Quincy reached into the envelope and pulled out another slip, an address in the South Side. A school, and a note. "Jonah's at Lincoln Arts High. Plays drums now. Ask for the music wing." I thanked Quincy and left, clutching the photos like proof of some impossible secret. Lincoln Arts High was a boxy red brick building with murals blooming along its walls. Inside, music pulsed through corridors. I followed it to the band room, where a boy sat behind a kit, stick in hand, 17, maybe 18. Skin the color of warm mahogany, dreadlocks pulled back. He didn't see me. He was too lost in rhythm. I waited until he paused. "Are you Jonah Davis?" He looked up surprised. "Yeah." I handed him the photo of him as a baby, in my father's arms. He stared, eyes wide. "He left me a playlist," I said softly. "Each track is a story. You're one of them." Jonah didn't cry. But he went quiet in that way people do when they're rearranging everything they thought they knew. "He taught me my first beat," Jonah said. "Used to tap rhythms on tables. Said if I could make the table sing, I could make anything sing." He handed me his earbuds. "Track 13, he whispered. It was Namer by John Coltrane. The metadata, Jonah, was the rhythm I couldn't keep, but he gave me tempo when I'd lost mine. If you find him, tell him, I'm proud." We listened together, surrounded by the ghosts of melodies. As the final note faded, Jonah nodded. "He was a good man," he said. "He was trying," I corrected. Because by now, I knew my father wasn't perfect. But he had been composing something, note by note, person by person, a symphony of secrets, stitched with love. And I was only halfway through. I didn't press play for a week. The iPod sat on my nightstand like a relic, pulsing with unspoken truth. I kept thinking about Jonah, about Lena, about how many people my father had loved in the spaces between his silences. He'd lived so many lives, and yet I only ever saw one. Track 14 waited like a dare. When I finally pressed play, I was on the L, headed downtown, the city blurring past the windows. The song was exit music for a film by Radiohead. It started quiet, that whisper of Tom York's voice. But the note in the metadata hit louder than the crescendo. I left more than music behind. Go to 423, North Campbell. 3rd floor, bring the key. The key. It took me an hour to realize what he meant. Tucked inside the envelope Quincy gave me was a small brass key on a velvet string. I hadn't thought much of it, assumed it was to a storage unit, or maybe an old locker, but now I had a destination. 423 North Campbell was a plain brick walk-up in Ravenswood, the kind of place with peeling paint and creaky steps. I climbed to the 3rd floor, found apartment 3B, and slid the key into the lock. The door opened. Inside, time stood still. It was a 1-bedroom apartment, but it felt like a museum, a shrine. Instruments lined the walls, trumpets, guitars, an upright bass in the corner. Sheet music was pinned like wallpaper. The air smelled of dust, oil, and something floral, lavender, maybe. And in the center of the room, under a cloth, something bulky waited. I lifted the sheet, a reel-to-reel tape machine. Beside it, a single note. Play this last. My fingers trembled. I didn't touch it. Not yet. I explored the rest of the apartment. There was food in the cabinets, clothes in the drawers, and records stacked like a tower. Whoever lived here hadn't abandoned it long ago. On the kitchen table was a photo of a woman, younger than my mother, sharp eyes, confident smile. On the back, Aria, another name, another chapter. I searched the iPod, track 15, Holocene, by Bon Iver. Aria taught me how to stay. She also taught me how to leave. This place is hers. Was. She left the lavender for you. I opened the closet. On the top shelf, a wooden box. Inside were letters, all addressed to M. Alvarez. Nay, dozens of them. I sat on the floor and began to read. They started in 2000. Dear Mara, I saw you from across the street today. You didn't see me. You were laughing with your mother. I wanted to wave, but I couldn't. I wanted to hold your hand, but I didn't deserve it. Another, you played piano at the recital. I sat in the back. I cried. You look just like her. I wanted to tell you I was proud. But I stayed in the shadows. Again, and another. I wrote a song for you. It's on the tape. I didn't know how else to say it. I couldn't breathe. Tears blurred the ink. My father had written to me for years and never sent a single one. The next track, Restacks, by Bon Iver. You're the bridge I kept crossing in my mind, but never dared in person. But you were always music to me, even in silence. I spent the night in that apartment. I lit the lavender-scented candle left by the sink. I played his records. I read every word he never sent. And in the morning, I sat down at the reel-to-reel, pressed play. His voice again, older, fragile. Mara, this is the last thing I'll say. Everything I didn't say in life, I've said in this playlist. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I only ask that you understand. I tried. Music was the only way I knew how to love. You were always my favorite song. Silence. Then piano. A melody I'd never heard. It was simple, raw, broken, beautiful, and it was mine. The melody echoed in my chest long after it stopped. Even as the tape spun into silence and clicked to a stop, something lingered, like smoke after a match is snuffed out. The finality of it hurt more than I expected. He had saved the most vulnerable piece of himself for last. A song, for me. But the playlist wasn't over. There were still tracks left. And I was beginning to understand something vital. This wasn't just about uncovering his secrets. It was about letting them change me. Track 17 was The Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel. I pressed play, half expecting another address, another twist, but instead, The metadata was blank, just silence. Intentionally so. I listened all the way through. Not a word, no confession, no breadcrumb. Just the song itself, a hymn of alienation and regret. It played like a pause, a breath, a requiem. And when it ended, I felt it. The shift. He had nothing more to give. What remained now was mine to decide. The next track came as a surprise. It wasn't a sad ballad or a brooding jazz number. It was Don't Think Twice, It's All Right, by Bob Dylan. This one had a note. If you've made it this far, you're stronger than I ever was. I never meant for the silence to win. I just didn't know how to lose gracefully. But you moved forward. You listened. That's all I ever needed. I played it twice. Then I drove back to the house where I grew up. Mom's house. The one that never quite stopped smelling like cinnamon and books. It had been years since I returned. Not since the funeral. The front porch steps creaked the same way. The key was still hidden in the ceramic frog under the mat. Inside, everything was preserved like a memory frozen in amber. Photos on the wall. The piano in the corner. And on the kitchen counter, a letter, yellowed with time, addressed to me. No postage, just my name, in my father's script. I opened it with shaking hands. Dear Mara, if you're reading this, then the music found you. I don't know how. I just hoped. I've spent a lifetime writing songs to everyone but myself. This is the first one I wrote just to listen. There was a moment once when I held you after your first recital. You were maybe 10. You cried because you missed a note. I told you that real music was in the space between the notes, the silence. You didn't understand then. Maybe you do now. I hope you find peace in every gap I left behind. In every note I didn't play. I loved you, always, in every key.
Dad.
The last tracks on the iPod played as I sat on the kitchen floor. Just me, the ghosts, and his music. Track 18, River, by Joni Mitchell. Track 19, Hallelujah by Jeff Buckley. Track 20, The Luckiest by Ben Folds. Each one like a soft touch on the shoulder, a breath at the nape of my neck. Track 21 was titled simply, For Mara. It wasn't in any known catalogue. It wasn't labelled beyond the title. But I knew the piano tone. I knew the shift of his fingers. It was the full version of the melody, from the reel to reel. It was my song. And with it came the final metadata note. You are not what I left behind. You are what I hoped would carry forward. Make your own playlist. Let silence teach you. Let love guide you. I'll be listening somewhere between the lines. I cried until I laughed. Then I laughed until I sobbed. And then I just sat there, breathing, alive. It wasn't closure. It was connection. And it was enough. Grief is a strange sound. It's not the sobbing, not the breaking. It's that low thrum beneath it all, the static that hums in your bones when everything you thought you knew has changed. I kept the iPod in my pocket now, not as a device, but as a relic, like a talisman, a compass that had guided me back through a father I barely knew and a version of myself I'd forgotten how to feel. I didn't expect the playlist to continue. 21 tracks felt like a perfect ending, but there was a 22nd, track 22, motion picture soundtrack by Radiohead. A dirge, a hymn, the kind of song that feels like the edge of something. And a final surprise, the metadata note simply said, Linkin Park, the bench with the brass plaque. July 5th, new. Today, it was already 11:20 a.m. I threw on clothes without thinking. The playlist had conditioned me to obey its summons. It felt sacred, like a ceremony. I couldn't miss. Linkin Park was bright and warm. Families with strollers, dogs chasing frisbees. The world continuing, as if nothing had ended. I wandered through winding paths, searching for brass glints in the sunlight. Then I saw it, a bench facing the pond. The plaque read, In memory of Emilio Alvarez, father, musician, ghost in the static. I sat. The breeze lifted the hair from my shoulders. Ducks floated like punctuation on the water. And beside me, tucked under the bench, was a small box. I opened it. Inside, headphones, a small battered cassette recorder, and a tape labeled in fading marker, Mara. One last time, I clicked it into place, pressed play. Static at first. Then his voice. Just barely. This one's live, no edits, no backing track, just me. Then piano. The theme I'd heard before, now fuller, with imperfections. He's missed. Breath breaks. The creak of the stool. And then his voice. He was singing. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't in tune, but it was his. If I had words, they'd come out wrong. So I wrote this song for where you belong. Not in the shadows, not in the rain, but in the chorus. Singing. Again. Silence. Then. You don't need this anymore. The playlist ends with you. The tape clicked off. I sat in stillness. He had left me everything, and somehow, even in death, he had returned the music to my life. Later that evening, I called Lena, told her about the bench, the tape, the final words. Then I called Jonah. I asked if he wanted to meet. Then I pulled out my old laptop, found an empty playlist window, and typed the title, For Emilio, the first track, my own piano recording. Rough, hesitant. I hit record, let the silence be the intro, then began to play. A week later, we met at Quincy's bar. It was late. The kind of late where the world felt like it was catching its breath between one life and the next. Lena was already there, sipping ginger ale at a booth near the stage. Jonah came in right behind me, drumsticks poking from his back pocket like exclamation points. We didn't need to say much. We knew why we were there. Quincy had cleared the night, told the regulars it was a private set, family only, he said with a wink, as if he'd been waiting years for this to happen. The lights dimmed. The old piano gleamed under the spotlight like a sleeping animal, waiting to wake. I sat first. Then Lena, cello in hand. Then Jonah took the drums. Quincy picked up his trumpet and stood at the side, nodding. We didn't rehearse. We didn't have to. Because the music was already in us, written across DNA strands, inked in loss, tuned through time. We began with the melody from the tape. The one Dad had left unfinished. I played it soft, giving space for the others to find their voice. Lena joined in next, her cello wept and soared. Then Jonah added rhythm gentle, then surging. Quincy waited until the chorus to blow 3 notes so clear they cracked something in the room. People watched from the bar. A few cried. Most didn't move, because what we played wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. After, we sat together, on stage, panting, laughing. A mess of emotion and string vibrations. What do we call that? Jonah asked. I smiled. Dead Man's Playlist. Lena raised her glass. To Emilio. Quincy added. To unfinished songs. We toasted in silence. Later, we made it a tradition. Once a year, same day, same place, we'd play something new, something old, something that hadn't been written yet. And every time we added one more person to the audience. A cousin, a friend, someone who needed to remember what it meant to be found by music. I still have the iPod, but I haven't pressed play in a long time. Because now I know the songs by heart. And in quiet moments, alone, with a blank page or an open piano, I still hear him. Not as a ghost, but as harmony. As a father who spoke through silence and taught me how to listen. Encore.